When your own family forgets your birthday, it doesn't just sting, it settles deep inside you like quiet frost. You don't show it. You smile, you go on with the day, but something in you grows still, a silence that isn't just about being forgotten. It's about realizing where you stand in people's hearts. That was me last year. My name is David Harris, and I turned 52 on a cold February morning. My wife, Linda, was busy preparing for her sister's trip. My daughter, Megan, was too caught up with her new job, and my son Ethan, well, he barely lifted his head from his phone these days. I didn't expect much. Just a happy birthday, Dad, maybe a small dinner, nothing grand. But as the day went on, not a word came. Not one. I made my own coffee. I drove myself to work. My colleagues, well, they didn't know either. It was an ordinary day for everyone but me. When I came home that evening, the house was filled with noise, laughter, TV, and the smell of pizza. But it wasn't for me. They had ordered pizza because Megan had gotten a small promotion. Everyone was celebrating her, not realizing that the man standing in the kitchen doorway had spent his entire birthday invisible. I smiled. I even joined them for a slice. When Linda asked, "You okay? You're quiet tonight," I just said, "I'm fine. Just a little tired." She kissed my cheek and went back to laughing. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't feel anger. No, anger burns fast and dies out. What I felt was colder. A slow, sinking realization that I had become a background character in my own home. And that was the night I decided I wouldn't complain. I'd do something else. Something silent. Something they'd never forget. For years, I had been the steady one. The man who paid the bills, fixed the roof, stayed late at work to make sure the family could live comfortably. I wasn't flashy. I didn't demand attention. I thought love was shown through actions, not words. Turns out, silence makes people forget you exist. Linda had her circle of friends, brunches, yoga classes, wine nights. Megan had her office life, and Ethan was a teenager lost in screens. I had become the house's invisible foundation, important but unnoticed. A week after that forgotten birthday, Linda asked if I could transfer some money to cover a small furniture purchase. I said yes. I always said yes. That's when I realized something. They all expected me to say yes. They never thought of me as a person with feelings, only as the man who makes things work. I didn't blame them. I had allowed it. I had built this quiet cage myself. But I wasn't going to break it with noise. I was going to open it with grace. That's when the idea came, simple, peaceful, yet powerful. I started writing letters. Real letters. Each one was addressed to my family, Linda, Megan, and Ethan. In those letters, I wrote the things I never said out loud. I didn't accuse or complain. I simply told them what I had loved doing for them, what moments I cherished, and what I missed. I sealed them in envelopes and placed them in a box I ordered online. A plain wooden box, engraved with a single word, memories. Then I started gathering things, photos, ticket stubs, a drawing Ethan made when he was 5, Megan's first report card, Linda's old love note from when we were young. Each item had a letter to go with it. I didn't plan to give it right away. I wanted it to arrive when it mattered most, when silence would be loud enough to echo. And so, I waited. The following months, I started stepping back quietly. At dinner, I let them talk while I listened less. When Linda asked for help, I still did it, but I didn't go beyond what was needed. When Megan talked about work, I smiled but didn't offer advice unless she asked. And when Ethan wanted new gaming gear, I told him, "You'll need to save half of it yourself this time." Small shifts. Calm, but noticeable. At first, they didn't see the difference. Then they began to feel it, in small inconveniences, missing gestures, little absences of attention that once came automatically. Linda began asking, "You seem distant lately." I would just smile and say, "Maybe I'm just learning to rest a little." But inside, I was observing them. watching how quickly they had learned to live without noticing me. Until one night, Megan came home crying. Something about her manager criticizing her work. Normally, I would have stayed up late, talked her through it, maybe made her tea. But that night, I just said gently, "You'll handle it. You always do." And I went to bed. It wasn't cruelty. It was restraint, letting them feel the space they had created around me. Then came summer. Linda's sister invited her on a 10-day trip to Florida. She went. Megan was busy. Ethan had a camp. And for the first time in 26 years, I was home completely alone. It was quiet, painfully quiet at first. Then peaceful. I cooked my own meals, cleaned, and even started painting again. Something I hadn't done in years. It was during that solitude that I finished the final letter and placed it in the box. The letter wasn't to any of them. It was to myself. It said, "You gave everything, David. Not for thanks, but because it was right. Now it's time to be seen again, not by noise but by absence." When they all returned, I didn't rush to greet them. I smiled, hugged them, and went back to reading my book. They found the new me confusing. Calm but distant. Present but quiet. Linda started asking, "Is everything okay between us?" I would just say, "Everything's fine. Don't worry." And that scared her more than any argument could. Because silence, when used right, speaks louder than words. Then came February again, my next birthday. I didn't remind anyone. I didn't mention the date. I just went about my day as usual. Linda was busy planning a family lunch for her mother. Megan was traveling for work. Ethan was at college now. I was alone again. That morning, I brewed my coffee and sat by the window, watching the snow fall. A year had passed, and I had learned to enjoy my own company. Around noon, the doorbell rang. A delivery man stood outside with a large brown box. "Mr. Harris?" "Yes. Delivery for you." "Happy birthday, sir," he said with a small grin. I hadn't ordered anything. When I opened it, my heart stopped for a second. Inside was the memory box, the same one I had packed months ago. Except now, it had something new on top, a handwritten card that said, "To Dad, from the ones who forgot." I sat down slowly and opened the box. Inside were my letters, opened, read, tear-stained. And beneath them were new letters, one from each of them. Linda's said, "David, when I found your letters while cleaning your study, I broke down. I didn't realize how blind we'd been. You gave us everything, and we treated your love like background noise. I'm ashamed. You taught me what quiet love looks like, and what happens when it's taken for granted." Megan said, "Dad, I read every letter you wrote me. I cried through them all. I forgot your birthday last year, but I promise you, I'll never forget what kind of father you are. You never raised your voice, but your silence taught me more than words ever could." And Ethan's, the one that made me cry, said, "Dad, I used to think you were just there. Now I realize you were everything holding us together. I'm sorry for treating you like you didn't matter. You matter more than I ever said." I sat there for a long time, the snow still falling outside, the coffee cold beside me. It felt like the world had come full circle. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't blamed. I had simply shown them what my absence felt like, and they had understood. Sometimes, that's how heaven works, not through miracles, but through reflection. That evening, Linda came home early. She had cancelled her plans. She hugged me, tighter than she had in years, and whispered, "I'm sorry for forgetting you when you needed to be remembered." We didn't throw a big party. We just had dinner together. Megan called in through video, and Ethan joined online. We laughed, talked, remembered old times. It wasn't perfect, it was real. Over the next few weeks, I saw small changes. Linda started cooking my favorite meals again, not because I asked, but because she wanted to. Megan began calling just to talk, not for advice, just to share her day. And Ethan, he sent me photos from college saying, "Look, Dad, I'm doing what you always said, finding peace in small things." It wasn't about the gifts or the apologies. It was about awareness, the simple act of seeing one another again. The memory box stayed on the mantel after that. Sometimes, Linda placed flowers beside it. It wasn't a shrine, it was a reminder. A reminder that love unspoken can fade, and gratitude unexpressed can wound quietly. I realized something through all this: I didn't need to punish anyone. I just needed to remind them of what I had given. True revenge doesn't destroy. It teaches. And the best lesson is the one that comes wrapped in understanding, not anger. One Sunday morning, Ethan came home for a visit. He noticed me sanding down an old chair in the garage. "Still fixing things, Dad?" he asked, smiling. I chuckled. "Some habits die hard." He looked at me, thoughtful. "You fix people too, you know." That one line stayed with me for days. Because maybe that was my quiet purpose all along. Not to win arguments or prove worth, but to heal through patience. Now, when I think back to that forgotten birthday, I don't feel bitterness. I feel gratitude, strange as it sounds. That moment of invisibility gave me clarity. It showed me that love isn't about being noticed every day. It's about being remembered when silence falls. The box from heaven, as I call it now, wasn't really from above. It was from within, a reflection of love that had been ignored but never lost. Sometimes people forget not because they don't care, but because they stop seeing what's always there. And sometimes the only way to make them see again is to step back, quietly, patiently, until they feel the emptiness your presence used to fill. I still keep the last letter I wrote to myself. It ends with this line: "You cannot make people value you by speaking louder. Sometimes, you have to go silent and let your absence say everything." That's the truth I live by now. I never planned revenge. I just wanted peace, and somehow, peace became my quiet revenge. Linda and I are closer now. Megan visits more. Ethan calls often. Not out of guilt, out of love. They remember my birthday now, but more importantly, they remember me. And as I sit here on another cold February morning, sipping coffee by the same window, I smile when I see the old delivery man walking past. He doesn't know it, but that box he once brought changed everything. Sometimes, the most beautiful lessons come wrapped in silence. And sometimes, silence is the best revenge.